let's keep it rolling with 7 more absolutely delicious bourbons. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So about a month ago or so, I released a video, 7 absolutely delicious bourbons. That video got a great response, lots of great comments, people going back and forth, and I figured, why not keep the trend rolling? There's plenty more that I really enjoy out there in the whiskey world, so let's highlight 7 more, shall we? 7 more bourbons that, at the end of the day, what matters the most about them is that they're dang good whiskey. In the first video, I talked about how we sometimes get caught up in all these lists and different ways of looking at whiskey, price points, trends, all that stuff, and it can be easy to kind of forget that the most important thing when it comes to sipping whiskey is whether or not the stuff we're sipping is really quite delicious or not. So we are going to dive in to 7 more whiskeys that I consider just phenomenal. And the only thing that really matters here is that they taste great. So first on the list, and we're going to work our way up from sort of a cheaper price point all the way to more expensive and limited. But first on the list is an absolute staple and an absolute classic that is wonderful, and that is Wild Turkey 101. So I've gone through multiple bottles of this, currently empty. I do need to restock soon. This is a great sipper all on its own, like so full of cinnamon, brown sugar, and just classic quintessential bourbon. A little bit of that Wild Turkey funk you'll get to kind of introduce yourself to their particular profile. But man, it's great stuff. A lot of people do have the unfortunate experience of this being something they did shots of in college or something like that, and then they didn't like it. If you return to it as more of a whiskey connoisseur, somebody who's collecting whiskey, you'll know that for 20 to 25 bucks, there's basically nothing better. It's also a great mixer, goes awesome in cocktails, especially with that 101 proof. All right, next on the list is a bottle that I have literally not stopped talking about and recommending to people since it came out, and that is the Bardstown Bourbon Company Origin Series Wheat. This is their bottled in bond wheated bourbon. 6 years old, 100 proof, and it is so good. Raspberry, chocolate, wheat presence to it, just like straight up wheat sweetness. And man, it just goes down easy with so much flavor. So really great stuff. This does go up to that like $50 price range, but if you're willing to step up into that category, this is one of the more delicious options out there. Okay, next on the list is one that I kind of slept on for a while, but then once I got a bottle, man, it's great stuff. And that is Baker's 7 Single Barrel. So for me, this is like cherry cola and brown sugar, a little bit of cinnamon and spice and baking spice. It's a Jim Beam profile that I really enjoy. It is always 7 years old at least, but mine in particular is 8 years and 7 months. So you can get stuff that's a lot older than that 7-year-old age statement, and it's just delicious whiskey for around $60 to $65. This is one of the better options out there, and it's a single barrel, so you can kind of get a varied experience and slightly nuanced flavors each time you go out and grab a new one. All right, next on the list is one of the newest ones on this list from a distillery that I've found myself praising more and more, and that is New Riff 8 Year. So this is a 100 proof bourbon, and man, is it phenomenal. Lots of great cherry and oak. Those two really blend together here. And then there's this interesting like blackberry tang to it as well that I get on a lot of New Riff, and it's really well turned up in this 8-year product. One of their oldest things they've ever released. They consistently make great stuff over at New Riff, but at this age, it just goes toward really delicious and worth the buy. This is available for around 65 to 70 bucks. So really quality product, and excited to see New Riff continue to get older and older because it just keeps getting better and better in my opinion. All right, next on the list is what might still be one of the most underrated bottles out there, even though word is starting to spread. That is James E. Pepper Barrel Proof. You've probably heard me start to highlight this on the channel quite a bit, and that is because ever since I grabbed it, I've been really impressed with how delicious it is. It's got this white grape, peachy kind of quality to it, so lots of bright fruits, but backed up by this oak and spice that at barrel strength really gives it a nice backbone. So an absolute underrated hitter that's available for around $65. Sits right in that kind of category of Blanton's, and it's a nice decanter, so it's beautiful. But if you ask me, it's quite a bit more delicious than any Blanton's I've tasted. It is really, really good. Okay, the next bottle on our list is actually the one I've got poured up here. It's one I don't sip on often enough, even though I know in my mind it's really, really delicious. There's a reason for that though. But first, let me dive in here. Yeah, apples. Kind of like apple pie, cinnamon, apple, cherry, oak, and brown sugar. Cheers. It's even better on the palate. It delivers that apple pie, apple crisp kind of thing. And it is so rich too. That is the Belle Meade Reserve. So the reason this doesn't get sipped on a bunch from me is that they did take this out of the national market. So it's more spotty where I can see it, and I haven't seen it as much on shelves, and sometimes it's marked up. But usually when this was released widely, and if you can still find it for around MSRP, it's like 65 to 70 bucks. It is 108.3 proof, great proof point, and pretty much anybody who's sipped it can tell you, in one word, delicious describes this bourbon. It is quintessential bourbon at really nice proof point that I think pretty much everybody should try to get if you can still see it near you. Okay, so I moved everything down just to make room for our last bottle, which is by far the most limited and most expensive, but there's a reason for that, and this one was a particular experiment where they responded to the cries of the people who knew this was going to be delicious bourbon, and it turned out we were right, and that is Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. So Maker's Mark, their first foray into really aged whiskey with an 11 and 12-year-old blend here. We knew that wheated profile was probably going to really sing when it got older, and oh man, it does, especially on the nose. It's a wonderful, complex experience throughout, but the nose is spectacular, and then the palate just kind of goes a lot of different directions, but it does turn up that classic Maker's Mark profile with more oak and more flavor punch, especially at that cask strength. It's just so good. In fact, it is delicious. All right, so that is the list, everybody. 7 more absolutely delicious bourbons. These are all in that category of relatively affordable, except for the Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. But still, what matters most about them is that they are just quality sippers. When I think of these bottles, I do think tasty, delicious, really, really good, and I just want to sip on them. So I gravitate toward these all at different times quite a bit, and I think they are all worth your attention and maybe adding to your list to go out and grab next. Would love to start a little conversation in the comments below, once again, just like the last video. What am I missing here? Have you discovered, in particular, any new favorites or really delicious bourbons? Want to always start a conversation around what we're each sipping on these days. While you're at it, would love to have you aboard as a subscriber for the rest of 2024 and beyond. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, I do plan to hopefully release a lot more great, relaxing, informative content for you. And then if you don't mind, please also consider hitting the like button on this video. That's what gets it out to the most people. Okay, everybody, that's going to wrap it up. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey, delicious whiskey, and cheers.